The Austin A40 Somerset emerged in the early 1950s as a carefully crafted answer to Britain's post-war mobility needs. Built from 1952 to 1954, it represented a transitional moment between wartime austerity and peacetime optimism. Consumers were eager for something more stylish than the boxy austerity models of the 1940s, yet they still demanded affordability, reliability, and low running costs. The Somerset's modernized traditional aesthetic captured this mood perfectly, with its rounded, bulbous fenders, flowing beltline, and the signature upright grille reminiscent of pre-war Austin prestige. It felt both familiar and reassuringly fresh. For British families desiring a car that projected stability, respectability, and modest prosperity, the Somerset was exactly the right formula. Underneath its elegant coachwork, the Somerset carried forward the well-proven 1.2-liter OHV engine from earlier A40 models, but revised with minor improvements. It was not a performance machine by any measure. Yet in the early 1950s, performance was not the priority for its target market. Families wanted fuel economy, simplicity, and components that any local mechanic could repair. The Somerset's drivetrain matched this expectation, delivering gentle acceleration and top speed suitable for Britain's narrow and winding roads. In many ways, the Somerset represented the very heart of early post-war British motoring. Quiet, responsible, and unhurried, a machine built for the everyday citizen navigating the new post-war economy. A particularly notable aspect of the Somerset's introduction was its positioning by the newly formed British Motor Corporation, BMC, established through the merger of Austin and Morris. Though early marketing leaned heavily on Austin's legacy rather than BMC's emerging corporate identity, the Somerset became one of the first models demonstrating the unified company's ambition to dominate export markets. Britain's government strongly encouraged automakers to export or die, and the Somerset played a central role in meeting these financial expectations. Its appeal translated surprisingly well abroad, especially in Australia, North America, and parts of Scandinavia, where buyers found its British charm refreshing compared to local offerings. The Somerset also benefited from the socio-cultural environment of early 1950s Britain. It arrived at a time when car ownership was transitioning from luxury to aspiration and, eventually, necessity. Many newly married couples, small business owners, and upward-moving workers saw cars like the A40 Somerset as a stepping stone toward modern living. It became a common sight outside new suburban housing developments, outside modest shops, and on the streets of rapidly rebuilding cities. This growing presence reinforced the Somerset's identity not just as a product, but as a symbol of a new, progressive, hope-filled Britain climbing out of the ruins of war. However, beneath its optimistic exterior were the seeds of eventual obsolescence. The Somerset was designed during a transitional period, and by the time it launched, automotive design and engineering trends were already evolving toward lower, more streamlined bodies and engines capable of higher sustained speeds. The Somerset's upright, formal design, once perceived as respectable, was starting to feel old-fashioned even as showrooms received their first shipments. Consumers didn't yet realize it, but the Somerset would soon be overshadowed by faster, lighter, and more stylish competitors that embodied the next phase of automotive progress. As the early 1950s progressed, cracks began to appear in the Somerset's long-term viability. Its conservative styling, once praised for familiarity, increasingly looked out of step with the rapid modernization unfolding in Britain and abroad. Rivals like Ford with the Consul and Zephyr, and even BMC's internal competitor, the Morris Minor, began adopting more progressive styling cues that emphasized lower bodies, wider stances, and sleeker lines. Meanwhile, Continental manufacturers were introducing vehicles that blended flair, efficiency, and engineering sophistication. In comparison, the Somerset's upright posture and heavy reliance on older underpinnings began to appear dated. The Somerset's handling and performance further limited its ability to compete in a quickly evolving market. While dependable, its 1.2-liter engine delivered modest power and struggled during long-distance cruising or when fully loaded. Buyers increasingly expected greater refinement, smoother transmissions, improved suspension designs, and better braking systems. Cars like the Ford Prefect, Vauxhall Wyvern, and later the Hillman Minx gave consumers options that outclassed the Somerset in modern ride quality. Even loyal Austin customers noticed that the Somerset felt more like an updated 1940s design than a truly forward-looking 1950s one. Export markets, once a stronghold for the Somerset, also began shifting. In places like Australia and New Zealand, consumers started preferring cars with more power suitable for long, open roads. In North America, where the Somerset initially enjoyed a novelty factor, buyers soon gravitated back to larger domestic vehicles or to compact imports from emerging European rivals. The Somerset's polite performance simply could not compete with the increasingly performance-oriented mindset of overseas buyers. Its export momentum gradually slowed, weakening one of the key reasons for its initial success. Inside BMC, decision-makers also recognized that the Somerset no longer aligned with the company's future direction. The corporation was preparing to transition to the more modern A40 Cambridge, a car that would be lighter, more aerodynamic, and better suited to evolving market demands. The Cambridge represented a new era in British saloon design, one that prioritized efficiency, style, and global competitiveness. As development of the Cambridge accelerated, the Somerset's role became increasingly limited to filling a temporary gap rather than defining BMC's long-term strategy. The Somerset's decline was not dramatic or scandalous. Rather, it was a quiet drifting away as the automotive world marched forward. Its sales never collapsed catastrophically, but they steadily softened. Buyers simply found better-looking, better-engineered alternatives emerging at a rapid pace. The Somerset was becoming a relic of an era that had barely ended, and though still respected for its reliability and charm, it no longer excited the imagination of a population that desired something more modern, more capable, and more expressive amid 1950s optimism. By 1954, the Austin A40 Somerset reached the natural end of its production life. BMC, eager to cement its post-merger identity, officially replaced it with the A40 Cambridge. The transition marked not just a change in models, but a symbolic shift in British motoring philosophy. Where the Somerset had embodied the cautious optimism of early post-war reconstruction, the Cambridge represented a Britain intent on moving forward technologically and stylistically. Showrooms quickly shifted promotional attention, and within months, the Somerset faded from glossy advertisements and frontline dealership displays. Production quietly ceased, and the remaining stock sold steadily until inventory disappeared. In the years that followed, Somerset owners continued to use their cars for daily life, and the model became a common sight on British roads throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s. Many Somersets transitioned into roles as second-hand family cars, first vehicles for new drivers, or inexpensive transportation for rural households. Their mechanical simplicity and readily available parts meant they remained operable far longer than many contemporaries. But as the 1960s progressed and motorways expanded, the Somerset's limited performance abilities and old-fashioned looks pushed it further into obscurity. It became, by then, a reminder of the gentler, slower-paced motoring era of the early 1950s. By the late 20th century, the Somerset found a new identity as a nostalgic classic. Vintage car enthusiasts rediscovered its charm, appreciating its rounded 1950s styling, its robust A-Series engine, and its cultural significance as a transitional model. Clubs and groups dedicated to classic Austins began preserving the Somerset, ensuring that parts, documentation, and restoration expertise remain available. While never achieving the cult popularity of the Morris Minor or Austin A30, the Somerset carved out a dedicated niche among enthusiasts who admired its unpretentious, traditional character. Today, the Austin A40 Somerset stands as a symbol of the early post-war recovery period in British automotive history. It embodies the moment when Britain sought stability after a turbulent decade of war and rationing. Its design reflects the cautious conservatism of its era, while its eventual decline illustrates the rapid pace of change that defined mid-century motoring. The Somerset may not have been revolutionary, but it played an essential role in bridging two eras, one rooted in pre-war tradition, the other driven by modern industrial ambition. In the final assessment, what happened to the Austin A40 Somerset was not a downfall, scandal, or failure, but simply evolution. It served its purpose admirably, offering the British public dependable transportation at a time when the nation desperately needed it. It faded only when the world moved forward, leaving behind a legacy of quiet reliability and warm nostalgia. Today, preserved examples of the Somerset endure as rolling reminders of Britain's journey, from post-war recovery to the dynamic automotive culture that followed.